The first thing I'd like to update on this form is the total amount of the supply request. Right now, without getting a calculator, it isn't easy to tell the subtotal of each line or the grand total of the supply request form. To accomplish this, we need a tool called Calculated Field. Let's start with the subtotal. For each of these lines, I want the quantity of items to be multiplied by the price each item cost. So in my toolbox, I'm going to grab this item called Calculated Field, and I want to make sure it's in the table because I want it to repeat for each line. So I'm going to drag it next to vendor and drop it there. As always, whenever we add a new item to our form, we want to give it a useful ID and a good label. Now, right now, all we've done is add a new field and give it a name. Calculated field isn't doing anything yet. To do that, we need to go into this property called expression. This is where we're going to configure our calculated field. What's nice about expression is we have a list in the expression builder that shows functions that have already been created. So if you take a look at this list, we already have some functions like get an average, get days between dates, get the current date and time, that's the now function, and we can also interact with other sections and fields on our form. The expression that we want to use on our table is we want to multiply the quantity by the price. So I want to take the quantity field in my requested items table, so I'm going to double click that. Notice it adds to my expression here at the bottom. And I want to click the multiply button and then double click price each. So it's going to take those two values multiplied together, and that's what will appear in the calculated field. Notice at the bottom we have no errors detected. You can always click validate just to make sure your expression is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and click finish. And let's test this out. I'm going to go up to test drive, and I'm just going to put some values into my table to see if it's going to calculate subtotal. So I'm going to order 100 sticky notes at 50 cents a piece, and we've got $50. It is working. I can even add another line to see if the function is going to continue to repeat. Let's get some pens. Let's order 70 pens at 10 cents a piece, $7. So our subtotal is working, but I still like to have a grand total to add up all of these lines. So let's go back, and we're going to add another calculated field, but this time I want to add the field outside of my table because I don't want the grand total to repeat. There's only going to be one grand total. So I'm going to grab my calculated field and put it just below my items requested table. Make sure it's outside the table. Again, I'm going to give it a useful ID and a good label. We're going to go back into our expression builder. We're going to use one of the functions that already exists here. We're going to be using the sum function. So I'm going to scroll down in my list. Notice when you click on any of the functions, it does give you a brief description of what that function will do. This is going to calculate the sum of an expression for all items in a repeating section, table, or nested table. This is perfect because our subtotal repeats in a table. I want to add up all those subtotals, and I don't know how many I'm going to have. I could have 5 lines, 10 lines, 20 lines, so I just wanted to add up whatever subtotals are there. Now notice in the name it also tells you how to build the expression. You need parentheses, and in those parentheses you need the name of the table as well as the name of the item that's going to be repeated that needs to be added up. So I'm going to double click our sum function here. And then I'm going to double click the name of the table. I'm going to add a comma because that's what it told me to do in the expression. And then I'm going to add the name of the field that's going to be added up, followed by an end parenthesis. To double check if I've done formatting correctly, I can click validate to make sure I don't have any errors in my expression. We'll click finish and test this out. I'm going to order 100 pencils at 50 cents a piece. Subtotal is still working. Notice the grand total is at 50, and then I'm going to add some markers. Let's do 20 markers at 75 cents. That's 15. So it's adding up my subtotal lines for a grand total of $65. Now, the grand total field we created is what we call a non-keyword field. It isn't one of the keywords associated with this document type. However, it would be nice to be able to search these supply request forms by total amount or even run reports off the total amount. In the next section, we'll look at how we can accomplish copying a non-keyword field to a keyword field.